Welcome back. Today we're going to be addressing concerns a young lady presents about people's racial identity within cosplay and whether there should be safe spaces too. On a personal note, I'm actually a bit of a fan of cosplay. I quite like going to con events and having a bit of fun. It's good, harmless, also costumes are beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Num num num. Anyway, take it away.
No one is telling you that you can't cosplay a person of color as a white person. They're telling you that you shouldn't.
Well, that's good then, because some people, some cosplayers, spend days, weeks, months making their costume, only for some retard to come up and tell them you shouldn't do that. Better that than telling them they can't because of racial identity, which seems a bit of a weak argument because I think if anything it's an homage to the character you want to portray. The real bonus here is that because you said shouldn't instead of cannot, it means no rules have been broken at the event being held. Therefore, that person can just turn around and walk away. They are not so delicate enough to get offended that you are offended that they are wearing a costume with some other person's racial identity on, even though race should not be a part of someone's identity at all. They use it as one and as a victim status. My apologies for the somewhat long-winded response to that very short clip, but as far as I am concerned, I don't care what the race of the character is. If you want to be that character, be that character. If someone is offended that the hue of your skin has changed to match that character because of racial identity and you may trigger some delicate people, those delicate people and the person who is also triggered telling you to begin with need to get a fucking life.
This is a broad conversation that is stemmed from a specific one that has been taking place on the GeekyCon 2018 Facebook group since yesterday.
Well, maybe I'll have a little look at the Facebook page you're talking about, GeekyCon 2018, and maybe see what the discussion was so I can better understand your point or the points of view presented by those within the group. Oh, I can't. Okay. I'm not joining either group, just to find out.
Someone asked if it's okay for white people to cosplay as Hamilton characters.
Allow me to reiterate my earlier remarks. If a white person is cosplaying as somebody who is of another race, I do not care. This extends to any other person cosplaying as another person of a race that does not match their own. It should not be exclusive to white people.
And they were asking if not, why, wanting to hear from all voices, including people of color.
I've seen a few people do this in the past to videos I've responded to, and I feel only right I should ask now, why on earth have you separated people of color from all people? Surely people of color fall under the banner of all people. Why are people of color so special that you have to separate them?
Now this question was met with a ton of white people on the defense saying that you can cosplay as anything if you love the character as long as you don't do black or brown face.
How is white people, or a group of white people, telling others what not to do, what should not be done in fact, an indicator of them being on the defensive? If anything, it tells me that they are giving solid advice. If anything, it tells me they are preventing possible racially motivated instances or attacks from happening by being a bit more sensitive to those who are a bit more delicate about skin tone.
And a lot of these white people in this discussion were speaking over the voices of people of color. Whenever a person of color tried to come in and say that they didn't agree, that they found this to be racist or problematic, they just kept explaining themselves and why they thought it was okay.
Oh no, those poor defenseless people of color, their voices were being oppressed by the evil white person. Could it be that in this instance, those particular people of color were being less than helpful, but were instead relying maybe possibly on buzzwords to convey a point that's racist? From what you've said so far, the white people who made a point made a solid point, a good point, one that was constructive. I disagree with it, but it wasn't simply them saying, no, fuck off, you're not allowed to do that. Fam.
Now, some people of color in that conversation also thought that it was okay for white people to cosplay as Hamilton characters, but several of them were clearly stating that they were uncomfortable with it, at best.
Do you think those people that felt uncomfortable felt that way because they believed either this would reflect badly on the group if the majority of society did not accept the costumes, or because it could lead to possible racially motivated backlash? It's a shame I can't see that discussion thread because I would have loved to seen the discussion unfold.
Mainly they were saying that it's harmful for white people to cosplay as non-white characters due to representation issues.
I stand by everything I've said earlier in that I don't care what the race of the character is or the race of the person portraying the character. Are you now about to tell me that if someone wants to portray a brown orc from World of Warcraft, they can't because that's racist? Or is this solely about the human or humanoid characters that are... Actually, that doesn't work. Doesn't work at all.
Now, I'm going to break this down a bit further to explain to you why it's not okay to, 1, speak over marginalized voices, and 2, to choose to cosplay as a person of color when you're a white person, and there are just so many white characters you can cosplay as.
And I'm going to tell you how everything you have said up to this point is complete and utter horseshit. It doesn't matter what race someone has when they speak over someone else. It's the same with gender as well. If you don't have a good point to add, then you, regardless of colour, regardless of gender, regardless of sexuality, or supposed experiences because of those factors, are irrelevant. You are redundant. This is where race, gender, sexuality, all those kinds of politics based on those do my head in. Fact is, it doesn't matter. And you just said there are so many characters you could portray as a white person. So, you portray the character you want. I know people who are black that portray a white assassin. Is that racist? By your logic, surely it should be. But of course, they're marginalized and oppressed. Oppressed where? They are not oppressed at the Dragon Con events, Karma Con events, any con really. They're not oppressed or marginalized at all. And this kind of horseshit rhetoric is what annoys us so much. You cling to this race identity, gender identity, sexuality identity nonsense because it's all you've got and it doesn't work. It falls flat because you're bullshitters at best.
Now, I know I'm white, and this could be taken as me just being another white girl talking over marginalized voices.
If we go ahead and use the reasoning you have used so far, yes, but I'm sure you've got a fantastic escape route.
However, I'm being an ally in this conversation because the other white people in this conversation will not listen to those marginalized voices saying that what they're doing is wrong.
Which basically implies that all people of colour or marginalised people are correct. It is possible for someone of another race to talk about their race incorrectly. No one person of any one race is truly representative of the entire race and therefore doesn't know everything about it. That sounds familiar. That sounds very familiar. Shit.
So those of us who are actually listening to marginalized voices just have to keep talking. So that's what I'm doing.
Because of how you phrased that, you now sound like you're talking over people of colour as well. Because people of colour are being talked over, we allies must keep on talking. I know it's highly likely that I'm taking this out of context, but it does sound amusing in my sick little head.
And I've spoken to several people of color about this very topic, and I'm here to spread their messages.
No. You're going to share messages from a few select individuals who have taken offense to this racial issue. Quotations around issue.
Specifically to the GeekyCon 2018 group of people. If you find that community and that group a safe space, that is great. However, for it to be a true safe space, we need to remember all of the identities of everyone involved.
And the best way to do this is to make the white people feel as uncomfortable as possible when talking about race, unless you are, to quote yourself, a racial ally.
I would encourage you to look at the Harry Potter Alliance's positive fandom guidelines to give you a good understanding of how to create a safe space, and I will leave that down in the link below.
Ooh, a link. Something to look at. So, positive fandom community guidelines. 1, I will be kind. Fair enough. 2, I will remember there are many ways to be a fan. Like, for example, Fandom Matters, a white person cosplaying as a person of colour, or a character of colour, I guess would be more accurate. Or is that still too racist? Unless, of course, you are a person of colour ally? Whatever. 3, I will make our community a welcoming space. Pretty reasonable if you want to welcome more people in. Yeah. 4, I will imagine people complexly. Well, that doesn't work for you either, Fandom Matters, because you've pigeonholed all white people as being incapable of understanding people of colour because they are white. 5, I will respect and celebrate diversity. Surely then a white person cosplaying as a character of colour is a good thing. Come on. 6, I will learn. I doubt you will. 7, I will teach. Well, those white people did try earlier to be a bit reasonable and flexible, but it fell flat with the several uncomfortable individuals. 8, I will give others the opportunity to grow. I'm surprised you haven't kicked them yet. 9, I will practice self-care. Okay. 10, I will remember to be awesome. Unless you're white, in which case you probably want to remember your privilege. Fandom matters, these rules are actually pretty reasonable, but I'd say 2/3 of them don't reflect on your ideas within your little Facebook group.
When a person of color doesn't feel comfortable when you're doing something they consider racist, you're not creating a safe space.
On behalf of all content creators, I accept your apology. Now tell me, why is it that people of color get a set of rules that are different to those of white people? Is it some kind of marginalized benefit, like a perk of being marginalized? You're not equal, so we're going to give you preferential treatment and a set of rules that make you better than everyone else.
And you shouldn't feel attacked if you're told that your viewpoint is problematic.
I think at that point, those using the word problematic are using it as a buzz term to simply silence a differing view, purely because race.
This is something that I've learned to do, and you should learn to do as well, because it makes a safe space for everybody.
No, it creates a safe space for very sensitive people of colour and forces white people who would question certain elements of those cosplay outfits to tread on eggshells for fear of reprimanding and probably being kicked from some Facebook group.
You should listen to those calmly telling you why your opinion or your statement is problematic, and you should take that in and readjust your thoughts or your feelings or your opinions on this matter based on the voices that you're not listening to and that you're taught not to listen to.
Ditto. Everything you have said so far in this video is problematic, and you should now go away, adjust, and learn from these mistakes, and come back more intelligent and invigorated to contribute towards this online community. We need to change our behaviors when they're upsetting to other human beings and people in our community. No, we don't. Everyone disagrees on something with someone somewhere. Quite frankly, I don't see a point. I would now say I was half expecting you to end that with people of colour. I really was.
It's really quite simple when you break it down and you stop yourself from being affronted immediately.
Is it me, or can you take that same sentence and apply it to the several people of colour who got offended when a white person posed the question about cosplaying as a person of colour?
If we can all listen to each other and have polite discourse when something is offensive, that's how we create safe fan spaces.
Your idea of a safe fan space is one where white people are made to feel like second-class citizens to people of colour because they're white and are therefore the oppressor and cannot possibly understand in any way how someone of colour has experienced their colour.
We have to listen to marginalized voices because traditionally we haven't.
Wow, that's such a good argument. With 10% of the world's population being white, I can see why they're so marginalized. Oh wait, you meant in the West. Right.
And it just makes these spaces worse for them. And worse for all of us in the end if we're not including everyone.
But by taking one group or one race of people to task because of problematic instances with regards to cosplay costumes, you basically ostracize them because of their race and elevate other races above them because they aren't being heard, even though they have been heard and have been dismissed as having invalid opinion.
Now back to cosplay for a minute. I've never personally cosplayed, but I think it's awesome and I love to see the amazing creations that people come up with.
Hold the fuck up. You're in a Facebook group about cosplay and you are dictating, you're engaging in conversation about something you don't even get involved in? The fuck?
There are a million characters that I could choose to cosplay, but I know to never choose a Hamilton character because it's not for me.
I have a better idea for you. Go away, make a costume, go to an event, cosplay, have fun, engage with actual people in real life rather than spending all your time on the discussion boards arguing about racial politics. Have fun as well. And then come back to me with whether or not you can get away with cosplaying as somebody of another race. Try Aveline. I quite like the character. I'm sure you'd look fantastic with brown face.
I can love Hamilton, I can sing along to the soundtrack in my car, and I can talk about how amazing it is. But I cannot dress up as Angelica Schuyler, even if I wanted to, because it's not respectful.
If you want to be respectful, perhaps take that respectfulness and apply it to those you have made feel like complete and utter cunts for wanting to be respectful in how they wore their costumes of characters from marginalized groups.
That musical was made to lift up voices of people of color, and not my voice.
I try not to pay too much attention to the racial identities involved in musicals, since there is one that exists called Cats. Is that now elevating the marginalized group of pussies?
Which hasn't been historically stomped upon.
You would make a crap feminist.
And if you don't understand this now, I would be happy to have further discussion down in the comments. If you take issue with anything that I'm saying, I will continue to be an ally, and I will continue to fight for marginalized voices, and let's have a discourse about it. I invite you to do that.
While I do not encourage people to actively go out of their ways to send hate, if you want to discuss with her in the comments section to that video anything she has said, do so. But do not go out of your way to call her a dumb cunt, please. Thank you all for listening.